Welcome back to the Engage podcast. My name is Laura Woods, and back from the line, we have Ryan Argenta.
Thanks for having me back, and it's good to be back after a nice break. And some of the best parts was living under a rock. So now coming back to the podcast, working with a great team, great administration, I'm happy to be here and happy to help out.
Awesome. Thanks.
Today we have the MEC Chairman, Captain Eric Criswell. Thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
In a different capacity now, you're the chairman.
Yeah, we meet again.
Yeah, this is a great setup and a great welcome back for me to the show and have you as our first guest. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here. Appreciate you guys taking the time.
Absolutely. Well, as I said, it's been a nice break for me, and I have kind of been living under a rock news-wise and union-wise and flying the line and just enjoying that. And
I haven't had a baby, I heard.
I had a baby, yeah. I have a son now, 5 months old.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
I thought your eyes look a little red.
Yeah.
Sleep's a commodity these days?
Sleep is a commodity. It has helped, flying international with jet lag helps you manage your jet lag with your kid.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's been a fun challenge. And
baby's healthy, doing good?
Yeah, everything's great at home. So yeah, looking forward to things to come there. So coming back, flying the line, hearing rumors, talking to pilots on the line about what's going on in general and hearing things about, well, there's pay issues, there's some anti-pilot sentiment from management, there's some disciplinary things, and it's kind of like, okay, well, not really in touch with things at the moment. And then I read your chairman's letter from March, just a couple of weeks ago. And I'm just going to read this because here's what got me. We have observed a consistent and disturbing theme of incompetence, indifference, and at times even outright resentment of pilots when attempting to resolve disputes with the company. So let's start there. What is going on?
Ryan, so I had my own time back on the line, and like you, kind of just disconnected as much as I could. Enjoyed flying this contract and with the awesome pilots I got to fly with during that time. But one thing that kind of hit me after the fact was everyone seems to have their own story of something that's happened to them, whether it's a, kind of a messed up scheduling situation, or, hey, I had to track down my pay for months and it's still not right, or, hey, I was going on leave, I was having a baby, and, it was just a nightmare to make all the statuses work, or I was going on disability and I just had no idea on what the process was. I couldn't get people to call me back, and training issues. I mean, it just seems like everybody has some story, and there's no one thing we can really point at. But when I thought about it after coming into this role, it just hit me that, look, this is not something that we're looking to create a new controversy or conflict. This is something that I think everybody has felt at some point in their time with Delta, that they felt like they could have been served better. And it's really about customer service, and it's not about, us versus them, ALPA versus management. It's not about that at all. It's about, we have pilots that provide a very important service for Delta. They leave their families for days or even weeks at a time to do that service for Delta, and Delta owes them at least a basic level of customer service that allows them to be effective at their jobs and to get the resources they need. So we've gotten reports from pilots through our reps and some through direct contact, darts, face-to-face. There is this trend where I think a lot of it is on the company for not properly training or giving resources to some of their frontline employees, which is not on the employee, by the way. I mean, that's one distinction I think we want to make that's very clear. Is there are a lot of really good people working across the street at the company that do a lot of really good things for pilots on a daily basis. Sometimes they lack the resources, sometimes they lack the training to do their job in a way that's either PWA compliant or that, fully supports the pilot. But there are definitely other times where some people across the street just have taken a kind of an anti-pilot mindset. And I don't know if they resent our contract, if they resent the lifestyle that pilots are able to live with this career, but there's just something there. And it's more than just the first problem we talked about, which is the training. There's this mindset amongst some, and it's not everybody by any stretch, but it's something that we'd like to try to positively influence. We have a short time that we get to have influence in this organization, and this is a high goal for us, is to try to find a way that we can have a better relationship for the individual pilot and their company counterparts, whatever their issue is.
Yeah, and it's too bad we have to go down that path, right? hope that a company would value their employees equally across the board and that the union wouldn't have to advocate for basic customer service issues, if you will. And so some of the rumors that I've heard are some of the things you identified in your chairman's letter. We've been talking about pay issues for quite some time now, and those seem to still be going on. Ryan Gumm came to the MEC meeting in March and presented, and it seems that pay issues had not yet been resolved, although he thought differently. So that came up. But other things, the abuse of the C&O system, the crew notification system, my crew has been an issue. There have been cases where the company is violating personal privacy issues by using the Hub app to track pilots on their personal devices, disregard for state sick laws, lack of transparency from crew scheduling. I mean, this list goes on. And then a plug for another podcast here that we did about resolved grievances or grievances filed. And so there's just this long list of grievances from the union on behalf of pilots, training, scheduling, planning, privacy issues. So there is some truth to these issues is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we have a number of ongoing grievances. We filed 5 more last week. These are not just trumped up issues. These are real things that affect a lot of pilots. And, that list you read, it's frustrating. I mean, this isn't a case of letting good be the enemy of perfection. This is legitimate cases where pilots have not been served well. And in many cases, that's in conflict with the contract. And so that is our highest goal, is to make sure the contract is followed as it was intended. And that's what these grievances, try to capture and resolve. But, that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is let's just treat each other like respected humans that we are.
Right.
And in some cases, there's nothing you can contractualize that forces interhuman reaction to be in an acceptable way. But we do have cases where, pilots have been very specific on interactions they've had that they just make you shake your head and wonder, how does leadership allow this to happen?
I'm going to hop on there because I was one of those pilots. I thought I had a really odd conversation with a chief pilot, and the call ended up going completely sideways, and we were disconnected, and they never called back. So I thought it was a one-off, that maybe somebody was having a bad day sort of thing. But as I talked to more people about it, it seems to kind of be the trend. And it does feel very anti-pilot. But is there anything that ALPA can do to kind of right the ship on this? Or is that completely a leadership issue at Delta, top down, that these people aren't getting the proper training, or they have a negative view of essentially their peers?
Yeah, I don't think there's any one thing. I think that, it starts with leadership. And to his credit, Captain Gumm has taken these issues seriously. He's met with us. In fact, they met yesterday and had a very pointed and long discussion over these topics. And again, to his credit, he does seem genuinely interested in setting a different tone. It's going to take time. I'm not going to make any guesses, and I'm not going to hold my breath. But right now, I do believe that we have the attention of leadership in flight ops all the way to the top, and I think that's a good first step. But again, I'm not going to make any predictions as to how they handle this going forward. However, I will say our contract does require a certain level of service. It has timelines, and it has, obviously pay features, and it has scheduling protections and all those things that, the Delta pilots have fought for decades and decades that now exist. Those do require a level of customer service. And when they're not followed, then we have a grievance process, which admittedly is not ideal either. But that's what we have. And in the gray area here in the middle is things like this becoming, the pilot group becoming aware, and we can communicate through this medium. We have a number of communications planned over these topics to educate and make sure that our pilots understand at least what the current situation is, and with kind of a hopeful eye on how do we improve this. And, that's the gray middle where you can't contractualize necessarily education and involvement, but it's on us to bring that to the pilots.
So what do you need from pilots who are maybe experiencing some frustrations or experiencing issues with the company or with management, or feeling like, hey, me too, I'm having an issue, or I have a pay issue, or I have these things? Who do you go through? What's our first call of, hey, I don't think this is right, or I don't think I'm getting the right level of service?
Well, first off, don't let yourself get sideways on a phone call or in person with anybody at the company. If there's an issue, do your best to advocate for yourself, but certainly don't escalate. Let us do that for you. your rep on your individual base is going to be your first line of contact. If you have an issue that you just don't know where to go, call your rep. You've got a great set of pilot advocates that are throughout our system that you've all elected to be your representative. So they can, if they don't have an answer, they're going to be able to get you in touch with people who do. But individual issues, we have the STS system with scheduling issues. So ideally, we give the company an opportunity to fix pay issues or scheduling issues on their own. And if you're not satisfied, then by all means, send in an STS report. We've made it a priority to surge our capacity to work on those reports. So I know when we took over in January, they were running about 800 reports deep, which was about a 3-month lag time from when you submit a report to when they get to it. I just was briefed yesterday that we're down in the 300s now, and we're about a month out. And our goal is to get that number down lower so that when you have an issue, you're not waiting 3 months for the answer. So that we're making good progress there. So that's your second, option, is if you just want to, send in the report there. We have the DART system. So if you have a training issue, if you have a, medical issue or a retirement issue, you can always fill out a DART and direct it to the proper committee. And those are returned pretty quickly. We get copies of every single DART that is responded to by our committees. And I'll tell you, they are working at 2 a.m. sometimes. I'm sure, from the other side of the planet sometimes to answer these DARTs. These committee members are extremely dedicated, doing that on their own time. So that's a resource that's incredibly powerful, because you've got our entire committee structure that pays attention to those and gets answers as quick as they can to you.
Why can't they figure out our pay? It's been a year. Ryan Gum promised a lot. Do we have any movement on that? Do we have a timeline?
It seems like something that's very doable. There was a briefing yesterday from the company's people that are working on this. Frankly, these software issues, we've seen it internally with our own software development program in-house. It takes time. That's not an excuse for paychecks that are not correct. So what the company is currently working on is an interface that allows pilots to look at their pay in a way that they can understand it better. It doesn't actually address why your pay was wrong in the first place. So this is a major issue. I think it's one that we need to be very engaged with the company on. But, for instance, if you get rerouted and you fly a different trip and it maybe triggers various pay features, you have new extended duty period pay that pops up because of the reroute. And you obviously have some reroute pay that pops up, and maybe you flew different aircraft variants. All those items have varying levels of automation built into the system in DBMS and our current scheduling system that trigger the pay. And the problem is a lot of times they're wrong, or they're not automated, or they rely on manual processes to apply the proper pay in the first place. Well, if the pay is not applied properly in the first place, the second piece is how it's displayed to you. Right now, it's a disaster. It's this quilt work of looking at your pay statement, looking at your pass report, looking at your paycheck stub, and trying to do the math on how did I get to these numbers. So that's the current display, which is really hard to figure out what you were paid. That step is going to become easier with the first phase rollout of pay transparency. So you'll be able to see, okay, actually on this rotation, I got this many hours of EDP pay, I got this many hours of SIT, I got this many hours of reroute, I got this variant paid this leg. You'll be able to see it easier. So that's not a negative thing. That's a good improvement. But it does not fix the original problem, which is they're not applying the pay properly in the first place, or in a lot of cases, it's a manual process. The pilot pay report becomes easier to use this fall. The other piece, the automation of the actual pay itself, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, and then jumping into privacy concerns for My Crew and Hub, and I know you're coming out with an MEC alert on this, which will be coming out shortly, and so pilots can look forward to that. But this is in regards to our PWA Section 24X, which talks about privacy, and with respect specifically to the Hub app, which is the app that you have to download onto your personal device if you want to, and then you from there can download My Crew, which we all use pretty ubiquitously, I think. There are some issues with that. The MEC alert goes into the details and the weeds there, but you want to talk to that for us?
Sure. Like you said, the Hub app is something that's a prerequisite for you to download My Crew. Obviously, we wouldn't want My Crew in the Apple App Store, so you have to download it somewhere else. So they use the Hub app to distribute it to the pilots. But the Hub app also has other capabilities, some of which we're aware of, some of which we probably aren't. But that would include location data, that would include cellular data usage when your phone is in airplane mode, perhaps, or other applications you have on your phone. It has the ability to monitor, track, and transmit information about all of that to the company. So when we became aware that Delta was utilizing the Hub app to watch for software on your phone that it felt was unsecure for somebody who had the MyCrew app on their phone, we started asking questions and said, wait a minute, what else is it doing? Why are you tracking this? And 24X specifically says that pilot's personal device, is sacred. You cannot utilize any company technology to track that device. So there was a desire to put it through the grievance process to say, hey, look, the truth has to come out, right? Facts have to come out in this process. We ended up talking with a company last fall in grievance mediation over this topic particularly, because this grievance was filed a year ago, and said, hey, what are you doing with this Hub app? What information does Delta get on individual pilots? And, frankly, what the company told us in that mediation sounded okay. All right, it's not doing any of the things that you are worried about. Hey, why don't you come over and look, and we'll show you. Well, you send your subject matter experts over. We'll show you the background application that sets all these settings, and we'll show you we're not doing any of that. So we felt in mediation that was a good first step. Okay, fine, we'll do that. We'll send our people over that speak that language. And if they say, hey, look, no, there's nothing, no harm, no foul, we're good. So that commitment was made in mediation. When we attempted to have those meetings, we've come up completely dry. We don't have that meeting scheduled. We've tried to engage them numerous different ways on this topic, and we still don't have any satisfaction on it. So for that reason, what we thought was going to resolve quickly is now started making everyone scratch their head. Maybe there is something there. So we don't know for sure. We sure would love to just put this to bed. That's one issue, right? The Hub app is an issue. There's a second issue that is related to pilots' usage of MyCrew. And this is more so because, MyCrew's become ubiquitous. Everyone has it. Everybody looks at it between every leg. You're checking open time or you're looking at your schedule. I mean, tell me if that's true.
It is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now
it was true for me.
Right. Yeah. And now Jetway trades are on there. And so it's a great tool and there's great functionality.
Booking your jump seat. I mean, it's all good stuff.
Even just knowing where the van is going to pick you up on an overnight. I mean, the simplest things are all held right there, and it's easy to access.
Rather than logging into iCrew and going through, DBMS and going. So no doubt it's a great app. It's a great feature. The problem, and I think this is where you're going with this, the problem is the company says this is an unofficial tool. You can't officially use the MyCrew app, but then the company is also trying to use it as an official tool, or the company is saying, hey, you checked your schedule and you knew you had a trip, but you didn't acknowledge it. And then the pilot is saying, but that's not an official.
It's in this kind of no man's land where they've developed it, they created it, they encourage its usage, but it relies on a computer system that the way it's been described to me is really just a parallel computer system with the actual one at Delta. So they have to replicate your schedule data and all the changes that happen in this parallel system. And then that's what populates the data in MyCrew. Well, sometimes that's delayed, sometimes it's inaccurate, sometimes it's not, properly synced at that moment you look at your schedule. So therefore, at times what you're looking at MyCrew might not be fully accurate. Now, that's the reason that it's not the official source. But what we've seen is that when you open up MyCrew, it knows every finger tap that you perform. So when you open your schedule, when you open OpenTime, when you do a search, all of those transactions are recorded. And so what's happened now in a couple different cases is a pilot is, let's say, between legs and they have an airport sit or they're transitioning from one gate to the other and they just happen to pull their phone up and either directly or even indirectly trigger MyCrew to have known that you opened MyCrew. The company in the meantime was trying to reroute you. You're not obligated to have a phone even when you're on a trip or to be contactable between legs. There's no obligation there. There's never been an obligation. That's not something that the company's ever tried to negotiate, because if they did, we'd put a lot of guardrails on it and a lot of protections, and very unlikely we'd come forward with any kind of an agreement on that. But there is no requirement to be contactable. In a lot of phases of your work cycle, from report to release, there's many cases where you do not have any obligation to the company. So what's happening is during those periods of time, if a pilot happens to trigger one of these events on their MyCrew app, the company then views it as well, you had the opportunity to know about this change.
So where you're going in the stories we've heard in the MEC hallways are pilots going between gates, gets rerouted. The company did not contact them through the proper channels or at all, or make an attempt. The pilot, a lot of times we just check our schedules. We're checking like the van
What's the
pickup.
gate?
What's the next
Where am I
gate?
going?
So now this pilot opens My Crew. It says, you've been assigned this reroute. And then the pilot says, well, I don't have to acknowledge that because I'm not.
Sometimes it doesn't even tell you to acknowledge it. Sometimes it's just there in your
there.
schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very inconsistent.
And so no requirement there. And then the company is coming back saying, hey, you checked your schedule 6 times between 2 p.m. and 2:08 p.m. So how can you tell me that you didn't know you had a reroute?
Right. That is the crux of it. And there are pilots that have now been called in for discipline over this. And our reps have done a great job of making sure that the Chief Pilot Office understands that, hey, this pilot was not contactable. This pilot did not have an obligation in this moment to acknowledge this schedule change or even know about the schedule change. So this is something that if we continue to see this trend, it may cause us reluctantly, frankly, to advise pilots that we do not think it's in your best interest to have the My Crew app or the Hub app on your phone. Right now, I believe that there's a course correction happening with these cases. I'm hopeful of that because, frankly, My Crew is one of these rare quality life improvements for pilots that most people have embraced. So it would be a tragedy to lose it. But I think, we'll continue to weigh that against some real threats that we've seen with our own eyes with regard to privacy related to the Hub app and with regard to potential discipline by the usage of My Crew.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good awareness for pilots in general. And again, MEC alert coming out on My Crew and Hub app specifically. Yeah, so good awareness for pilots there. I would say let's pivot and kind of wrap, but I do want to draw attention that you were the negotiating chairman of the negotiating committee during our last contract cycle, which was elongated because of COVID and all the delays and things. So you've been in that seat for a long time, and now you're the MEC chairman, which is, I think, a great pivot. It's a 2-year term. What does your next snapshot term look like? What are your priorities? We have contract openers coming up.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that at all.
Yeah, that may be
its own.
the next update on its own. But, we're still having implementation problems from our contract, but yet we're going to open with another contract cycle. Just give me maybe the nutshell, or, what are your priorities? What do you want pilots to know that you're working on?
There's a lot going on. And, this kind of first phase of our administration, I am hopeful that we can set the trend vector in a better direction on this customer service piece with the pilots, because that's a great foundation to build upon when you are into contract negotiations. There's nothing more frustrating than spending hours or even hundreds of hours, negotiating a provision in the contract to just have, some random person at the company just decide they're not going to follow it. So really feel like we need to have that foundation laid. And that's really our primary goal right now. The contract negotiations, it's coming fast. The MEC just elected the negotiating committee that'll handle the next contract negotiation. They're all really solid guys with varying backgrounds, which is a really good thing. And we're going to transition into 100% of our energy will be put into supporting them and making sure they have the tools they need, making sure that our whole organization is aligned to support that effort, because that's coming. We're almost exactly 1 year from openers as we sit here today. So those are really what I view as the big markers of this 2-year term, is just right the ship here as best we can between direct company engagement on these customer service issues and, defending our contract with the grievance process. And it'll phase into, contract negotiations and giving our team and the pilots all the resources that we have.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And, it sounds like you've got your hands full and a busy term coming up.
We got a great team here. I mean, you see it, you're here in the office. The energy is really quite exciting. There's a lot of people that I think have just an outstanding outlook on the way that this organization should run going forward. And it's really centered on the pilots. And that's, you want to just put an overarching umbrella on everything that is our priority. It is making sure that this organization is working every single day for the pilots.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you'd like to talk about today? Anything else you want the pilots to know?
Yeah, just we got your back. You're not out there alone. We have a huge organization here of people that are subject matter experts in any issue that you're dealing with on a daily basis. And we have mechanisms now for you to communicate with us effectively and get answers through STS, through DART, through direct contact with your reps. So don't hesitate to use us. You pay us dues. We are here as an organization to serve you, and you're not out there alone.
Sounds great. Eric, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, guys. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, what a way to come back and open it up with an interview with the chairman. And I'm glad to have you in that chair and glad to be back to help out. So
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming in.
You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.